Good afternoon. This is Michael with Premier Power on the half hour with Premier Power. We're an electrical station here talking about station for information. I am accompanied by, again, my father, Mike Holt Sr. with Michael Enterprise, electrical expert. We have with us Brian Birch, he's representing the consumer here for us. And my father and I are wired and fire all the time, and we're all over the place. So Brian's going to help us keep us grounded. That is an electrical term. So, Dad, what do you have on your mind today?
Well, today, and Brian, where you're going to help us out here is we're going to talk about smoke alarms, smoke detectors, and carbon monoxide detectors. And just some information. If you go to premierpowerinc.com, you go to the link under important information. There is a specific section on smoke detectors, and there's about 4 or 5 different links. And I printed out a couple of them here, Michael, so we can kind of discuss it. And I'm just going to read something from from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission document number 559. In the United States, about 3,000 people lose their lives in residential fires. That's a little point we want to keep in mind. Another point I want to talk about is the same report indicates that about 50%, and I'll read it again, expert report that consumers may cut the risk of dying in a home fire in half by simply having a smoke alarm installed.
Let me cut in real quick. You know, a big thing that we're talking about is electrical safety, is what we care about. I mean, electrical wiring can be hazardous, can cause problems, and so smoke detectors are a very inexpensive way or very simple way to help keep us protected and our family and our property involved in it. So it's always safety. We always get down to it is safety.
Brian, do you have any knowledge on smoke detectors, alarms, any stories as a consumer? What are your thoughts on it?
I know that my wife installed them in my house. I didn't install them, and I have no clue of what smoke detectors actually do.
Okay, do you know where she installed them at?
I know where one is because it goes off when the battery goes out, and it always wakes me up. I know it's in the bedroom, and I don't know where the other ones are. I think she put like 2 more throughout the house.
All right, let's talk about what they do. The purpose of a smoke alarm, and sometimes they're called smoke detectors, they need to be located inside the bedroom. So when you get home tonight, see if you have them inside your bedroom.
That is the one that I definitely know I have because it wakes me up when the battery goes dead.
How many bedrooms do you have?
1.
Oh, okay.
I have a very small house. It's about 700 square feet. So.
Okay, little bungalow there.
Yes, that is true.
All right, then you also want a smoke detector outside the bedroom.
Okay.
Most people listening to this radio station or going on the website get it probably have more than one bedroom.
I would assume.
Okay, so you want one in your bedroom, one outside the bedroom. The purpose of a smoke alarm or a smoke detector is there's 2 different types, and I'm not going to get into the technology, how it works, but it looks for smoke particles.
Okay.
And it could be a raging fire can cause smoke particles, and oftentimes it's a smoldering fire, a small fire that begins smoke particles. And that's what the smoke alarm, smoke detectors are looking for, to enunciate and to let you know. Now, interesting, Michael, I don't know if you're aware of this, but some of the smoke alarm, smoke detectors have voice on it.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about those?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, they actually have a voice. And here's how it works, Brian. If you're a family member, children are not going to respond to the alarm.
Okay.
But if they hear their mother's voice, Jason, wake up. There's a fire. I need you to get up and get out of the house.
You can customize a voice?
You use your voice. You know how you get these little cards, cards that you can buy, and you can say, happy birthday to you, Chris's grandpa, you know what I mean, like that? Well, you can get smoke detectors that are voice recordable.
Wow.
So then you press a button, you record the voice, to give them the instructions that they need to have for the children.
I know the new ones now talk to you, but they don't. They're an automated, woman.
Yeah, it's a woman or man.
She's a sweet lady. I have a great relationship with her because I install certain
protectors. But you can put any voice on there.
But the ones that I'm talking about, there are different ones. And Michael, since you didn't know about this, you might want to check. This is more important, let's say, where there's children in the home. Because kids are not going to respond.
Or handicapped people as well.
Well, I'm saying the voice of a mother, a voice of a father. A child is going to be more responsive to that than a voice of some unknown stranger.
Now, personally, I wouldn't want my wife's on there, being as it's only us two. So I would probably go with the Mr. T voice. So
okay,
if we could get like celebrity voices on it, but I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So now you understand how they operate. And now you mentioned about the chirping sound.
Yes.
And I was just reading last night. I'm reading a book on the 100 greatest disasters of history of time. Mm-hmm. And the beginning chapter of that book is talking about that whenever a tragedy happens, the first thing we do is we deny it. Like, okay, this is not happening. This plane is not going to crash. I mean, I'm not really on this island. I mean, so the first thing you deny, like, okay, and then or you're going to get in a situation like, well, that's not going to happen to me. I mean, I'm going to be okay. And then all of a sudden you get to some point that you are in a disaster.
Yes.
And then you have to deal with the disaster. And that's the nature of the way people think, and that is that, okay, the beeping sound. I looked at your house, Michael. I was in your office last week. I'm going to ask you a question right now on the radio, on the audio. Let's see what happens, the answer.
Uh-oh.
What was the status of your smoke detector in your office?
There was no status of the smoke detector in my office. It was removed because of the chirping noise.
Is it still removed?
It is still removed.
So you're on the radio show talking
So
about
I
smoke
am
detector.
at my house right now in my office. That area.
And why is it
unsafe.
removed?
Was it chirping at you?
It was aggravating the heck out of me.
Why didn't you just replace the battery?
There's no
How about the
excuse.
Knicks?
I'm just curious.
There's no excuse.
How about them Knicks?
Yep.
All right. That is what this magazine or this book was talking about.
Sure.
Is that the more comfortable you are with something, the more knowledge you are with something, like, we're fine. It's not going to worry about that. You being master electrician, premier power in your house on a radio show about smoke detectors. And I told you. What did I tell you when you're there?
You
a week
take
ago.
care of it.
You better take care of that now.
Right. As well as get some more lighting in there, too.
As well as getting more lighting in there, right? Because you're your home office and you really can't see that well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, how's that go, Mike? Gator Mike, how's that go about the shoe man, or how's that work out?
About the what? I'm sorry.
About the guy who has shoes, the cobbler. That the cobbler doesn't have he doesn't wear shoes or something like that. A carpenter doesn't, All right, Michael, you need to get that taken care of.
I agree. Absolutely.
But that's what this article was talking about, that we take things for granted. The more knowledge you are, the more likelihood that I'll be fine. And same thing with you. That thing is annoying. And that is a problem with smoke detectors, is that we need to replace the battery.
Yeah.
Battery
But
lasts.
it is an inconvenience. I mean,
It's
you have
up.
to get it's a whole process.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? Let me just unplug the thing. I'll get to it in a second.
See, my wife does that for me, so I don't have to worry. But the ones that we do have, and smoke detectors, there's a couple different kinds, if I'm not mistaken. She bought one we have gas water heater,
Fossil
and gas
fuel.
stove.
Yes.
So she bought one for, is it methane fumes?
No, it's
monoxide.
carbon.
So they had the different ones. So I know that we have different ones.
And
for
that's a
our
great
house.
point you're bringing up. And Michael, that you were going to read something, or do you have anything there in particular, or just say it?
Well, there's a difference, like Brian was saying. There's carbon monoxide detectors, there's smoke detectors, and then there's combination carbon and smoke detectors. And regular smoke detectors are required in and every outer bedroom, in a hallway. Carbon monoxide detectors are required when there's fossil fuels burning in the premise, and they're located within 10 feet of each bedroom. So, for example, right here on the Florida Building Commission CO detector work group, it talks about every building has a permit for new construction is required after 7108, required to have smoke detectors when there is fossil fuel burning heaters or appliances.
So what Michael was saying is that smoke detectors cannot take care of the problem of carbon monoxide,
Right.
with water heaters and gas stoves and what have you. So now effective in the state of Florida, anytime you pull a permit to do some work.
According to the Florida Building Code.
Now, we're not talking about electrical permit. We're talking about any kind of permit that you pull.
Okay.
They're saying this is our opportunity to kind of get into your house and say, listen, you need to have a smoke detector. And if you have fossil fuels, gas, propane, methane, propane, and natural fuel. I can't think of the other one.
LP gas. I mean, that's the
LP
same
gas,
thing,
whatever.
though.
That you're going to have a combination type of protection device in there.
Okay.
All right. Let's go on a little further. Has to do with the numbers, and what you want to do is have one inside and outside the bedrooms. And if you have carbon monoxide possibility, then you need to have those combination ones.
Does
And-
it say how many feet you're supposed to
Yeah,
have?
you know
one
what?
for-
I have the NFPA 72, which is the fire alarm code. And actually, believe it or not, I've read this over and over again about real, you get some real complicated scenarios. Yours is pretty simple, inside and outside. And I'll read about where they're located at. It says here, it needs to have one outside each separate dwelling unit sleeping area within 21 feet of any door to the sleeping room. So it has to be outside within 21 feet. It also says in there has to be one inside the guest rooms.
Okay.
So it doesn't get involved into, and there's all more and more specifications. So the key is that if you put it inside the bedroom, you put it outside the bedroom, you have a fossil fuel, you're going to get a combination A smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector. Now, a smoke detector is going to cost you maybe $15, where a carbon monoxide detector is probably closer to $60.
Now, let me ask you this. Are there different kinds? Are they all battery operated or are some electrical?
They're both. There's battery operated and there's electrical and battery operated.
Okay, if it's electrical, and let's say that there's a fire, what's to stop it from burning through the cable and you have no electric to it? What good does it do?
Okay, the way that works out is that if it's electrical, they're interconnected to other ones. So
Okay.
that if one goes off, then they all go off.
Oh.
So like if you had, let's say, a 4-bedroom home,
Sure.
okay, and you had children in there,
That'd be nice.
okay, and then one goes off, but it's going to turn the alarm off in your bedroom also, even though it might be outside a hallway.
Okay.
If you get individual units that are not interconnected together, which is what your wife purchased,
Correct.
then in your house, one bedroom,
It's small.
You're okay
Yeah,
in there.
yeah.
But if you had a larger home, then you'd want to interconnect those. But I need to get back. When we get back, Michael, you want to close this up, and we're going to talk more about the battery backup on those.
If you have any questions or concerns, give us a call at my 790 AM, 78352-787-9523. We'll be back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the show. We're talking about smoke detectors and all the ins and outs about them, what's involved, what's not involved, where they're required. Dad, go ahead and pick up where we left.
All right, Brian, your question was, so you understand that you can get smoke detectors that are single units,
That's correct.
and you can get them also interconnected.
Okay.
When they're interconnected, they have to be electrically wired.
And that's required by the Florida Building Code to be wired electrically.
Okay, so
not
the Florida
just
Building
battery.
Code requires you to have an interconnected, and you understand the concept of why it's
Sure.
interconnected?
Absolutely. Now, is that more of a, would you say, industrial use and
No,
not
it's
so
a
much
hou- it's a house.
residential?
No, it's a house. We're talking only. We're only talking residential.
How many residential homes actually do that? I mean, is it newer ones that have that?
Well,
Well, here-
before 1989, I believe in a
The electric?
study- well, they weren't installed really prior before then, but right now, generally, they're electrically
The
connected.
code right
Okay.
now, the Florida Building Code requires you to have. I'm building a house right now, so
Okay.
it requires them to be interconnected.
Wow.
It requires them. It doesn't cost that much money.
Okay.
No, it's, you just run a wire from one box to another box, another box, another box. I don't want you thinking it's a big deal.
Yeah, I get paranoid when, things like that. Of course, my house isn't that big.
But
so,
but
yeah.
but put it in perspective. If you have a home, you have multiple bedrooms, you have children, you have elderly people,
Sure.
you have people living inside there. We don't want to save a few dollars because we don't want to interconnect the.
That's correct.
So we want to interconnect the systems, not use single station units if there's a possibility. And your question, well, what about if there's a fire and all of a sudden it melts the wires and it shorts out the wires and it turns off the power? And then that's a real possibility. All the interconnected systems have that annoying battery.
It's a fail-safe.
It's a fail-safe. It's fail-safe to the degree of what? You have to replace the battery.
Now, here's one question. I had a friend. He had a car catch fire in his garage. He did
Yep.
not have a smoke detector in his garage.
Okay, that's right. They're not to be required in the garage.
Okay.
Wow. You know what? You bring that up. I'm actually going to add a smoke detector in my garage because I'm building my house right now.
His car, it was one of those that mysteriously caught fire types. With the electrical issues, recalls, and caught fire and burned part of his house down. But part of the problem was it was in his garage. Nothing went off. And luckily a neighbor came over and banged on the window and got him out. But yeah.
Maybe on a custom home, might be an idea. To
I think
have
it'd
them
be a
in
good
almost
idea that if you're
throughout
gonna-
the whole property.
Definitely. I mean, it doesn't cost that much to put one smoke detector. You're building a house. Put one in the garage. So I'm going to do that. Definitely, I'm going to do that. The key again, reinforcing. Go ahead, son.
Well, again, you got for the listeners, you can also visit us online at premierpowerinc.com. Visit important information. We have links on all that we're talking about today. So again, just use that as a resource as well.
Okay, can't reinforce again. That chirp going out, I know it's annoying, and that's one of the services that Premier Power Inc. offers, and that is a
Right.
home inspection. Go out, you check the GFCIs, you check the AFCIs, you check the wiring in the panels at the same time. You bring the batteries, and then you replace the batteries in the smoke detectors.
Yep, we check the smokes
and the
as well.
alarms, and
What is the golden rule for batteries on a smoke detector? Is it like every spring, every fall you replace it? Do we? I mean, because I know me, I couldn't do that. I can't change a light bulb.
I don't know what the golden rule would be, but I mean,
here's what it is. The Consumer Product Safety Commission kind of has a recommendation. When the time zone changes backwards,
Okay.
or daylight
Yes.
saving times comes
Spring
on, it
forward,
comes out,
fall
spring
back.
forward. They usually say in October to go ahead and it's the fall one is you replace the batteries in the fall.
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter when you do it, whether you do it in the fall, change the date. So it's kind of like, find something that you can kind of make a reference. Many of us now have computers. You can put a daily calendar in there.
There you
right?
go.
Just drop it in there. Okay, 1 year from now, change the batteries in my smoke detector. Maybe Premier Power might want to go ahead and send out a newsletter once a year around the time of the consumer, time zone, and just say, hey, listen, just a reminder, if you didn't change your batteries, you might want to consider changing your batteries. And if you don't change your batteries in time, it's not going to be a problem. Why is that?
Because if it goes dead, it's going to beep.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
And it'll let you know.
And then, you can always take it like off the wall so it doesn't work, right, Michael?
You could do that, yeah, but you're really jeopardizing your safety.
Yeah, okay, poor guy. He had the radio show talking about smoke detectors, and we beat him right up there.
Okay, being honest.
That's all right.
And he is honest. But again, the key there is when it comes to safety, those of us that have more experience are the ones that take the biggest risk. And that's the lesson to be learned here. Those of you that are listening to the show, you know what? You've taken that battery out. You pull that smoke detector apart. You found it to be annoying. That's really a bad thing. Let me talk about a couple other things here. Number one, before I get into a fire escape plan, is the life of a smoke detector. And I'm looking at a particular report here, and it says, here's what it says. One manufacturer, the Pitway Corporation, which makes about 70% of the detectors sold in the United States, recommends that a detector be discarded after 10 years. So we got to realize that smoke detectors are electronic devices.
They have a lifetime.
And that everything has a lifetime. And lightning event in Florida has a tendency to reduce the lifetime of electronic equipment even more. That's what we talked about. Last week's show was on surge protection. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks ago we talked about GFCIs. GFCIs fail at 1 out of every 8 or 12%. That report is on PremierPowerInc.com under important information. And it continues on to smoke detectors. These are electronic devices you're trying to depend on. So it's important, if you have not had your smoke detectors replaced in 10 years, you might want to consider having somebody come out there. Now, Michael, didn't you have some problem with some smoke detectors that were chirping? You replaced the battery, it stopped chirping, and then you had to come. Then they call you back later on. It starts chirping again. You go back to it. Must have been a bad battery. You replace the battery again. It starts chirping. What's the deal there?
Exactly right. No, you hit all the points. Even if you replace the battery, it still might not solve the problem. So, we get calls and they can become very frustrating. So you just go out, and if that's the case, we check it out, and if it still chirps, we replace the whole device.
So the first time you replace the battery, and then if it chirps a couple days later, then it's clearly there's something wrong. The best thing is if it's after 10 years old, replace the smoke detector and make sure that your home is fresh. Especially if you get a new home, you're moving in, let's say, home that's been short sale, you don't know what's going on in the wiring. And in Florida. Mm-hmm. I'm going to move on to one more point, and that has to do with fire escape plans, unrelated to electrical safety, because we're not talking about electrical safety, we're talking about electrical products that provide some kind of protection for life. And I don't know, Brian, I have 7 children, and Michael is my second, he's my second son, the youngest, he's my youngest son. And Michael, do you remember doing any fire escapes when you were a young boy at all in Coral Springs?
Very little.
What I did was I actually, of course, my wife was not for this. She was a little upset that I did this. I actually took like a piece of paper. I ignited it. I went to the hallway smoke detector, and I had the
You set it off.
I set it off.
Really?
I totally set it off. Now, this is the middle of the night. When I say middle of the night, it's 11 o'clock at nighttime. I set it off. Of course, all the kids are freaking out. They're all waking up. Nobody knows what the heck's going on.
Imagine that.
And so the lesson learned was like, okay, guys, here's what we want you to do. And I told them what it's going to be, what's going to happen again. I want you going back in your room. When you hear an alarm next time, I had each of the children have a specific plan. You go out this door, you go out this window, and you know what we found on that, Brian? And then again, another night, wait till they all settled, set off the alarm. Then, of course, all the kids are doing the whole thing. 2 of my daughters, Brittany and Megan, would not leave the room.
Really?
You know why?
No.
There was a screen in the window.
Okay.
And they didn't want to break the screen. So the concept of like leave the house,
sure,
just go through the screen, but they didn't understand how to move a screen. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the lesson learned there was they were not going to leave the house. They would have died in the fire.
Sure. So if it was a real event after that,
yeah, so
they would have known to just break the screen. The screen's only.
You know what I made them do then?
What's that?
You know what I made them do?
What?
Break the screen.
Break the screen.
Right there in front of me.
Just to prove the point.
Push it.
Sure.
Push the screen. Well, and they push lightly, and then you got to yell on the screen, you got to push it harder, until they pushed the screen, distorted the screen, until the screen came out, until they were able to get out of the window.
That sounds a bit extreme, but I'll tell you this. When my dad was teaching me how to drive, He made me drive off the road, bring the one wheel off the road just to see what it was like. That way you don't jerk the wheel and jerk back onto the road. He said drive off and ease it back on if you run off the road. Same thing. It's if you understand what the problem is later on. It's
what I would recommend those that are listening, if you have children. Number one, you want to get smoke detector, smoke alarms that have the voice recordability. And I don't know if it should be the father or the mother that should be recording, the communications. Number two, according to Consumer Product Safety Commission, you want to do fire drills on a relatively regular basis. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic, but it has to be set off the alarm. Make sure you actually see them go out. Actually practice the whole thing. We all had it set up that everybody met at the mailbox in our house.
I remember that now.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Everybody met at the mail. Now, Stephen, my oldest boy, he had a specific responsibility. The oldest daughter had a specific, all the kids, in other words, everybody, and we did this multiple times so they knew they could break the screen. And you know what I did, Brian? I got rid of all the screens. That way, I wouldn't ever have a question about the kids. They were going to go out the door. They were going to be safe, and I didn't want to take a chance. You have 7 kids in a house. You know what I mean? I'm an electrical safe. This is my world. You know what I mean? I'm not about to take that chance with my family.
Wow.
That's amazing. But those are the kids that after, if there was, God forbid, an event, a fire, those are the ones that are seen on the news afterwards saying, hey, we knew exactly what to do.
The book I was reading, it has to be 100 Greatest Disasters, was that, yes, we all have a tendency to become complacent like you are in your house. The more you know, the more complacent you are. So therefore, you didn't replace yours as the electrical expert because it'll be fine. And they said that when they gave people exercises and they studies and they did practices, as they practiced more and more and more, they knew what had to be done, what needed to be done.
Very good.
Thank you guys for tuning in. PremierPowerInc.com. Have a great day.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys.